One night during the second year of his reign, Nebuchadnezzar had such disturbing dreams that he couldn't sleep. I love the Old Testament. It's so relatable, and yet it's so understated at the same time. Like literature today, there are details that are left out because they're assumed. See, in Babylonian culture, bad dreams were seen as signs from the gods to be interpreted or understood for their significance to current or even to future events. So when Nebuchadnezzar wakes up and he can't go back to sleep because of this incredibly disturbing dream, the book of Daniel says that he calls in his magicians and his enchanters and his sorcerers and his astrologers. Now each of these is its own discipline, but together they basically cover all possible ways in that time of finding out what this dream means. He's the king, he gets the best of the answer people in his day. But then he does something strange. It says that he demanded that they tell him what he had dreamed, almost like he didn't trust them. And so begins this back and forth where the scholars try to talk him out of this obviously ridiculous request. The first time they tell him to inform them, "What is this dream of yours?" The second time they ask him. The third time they beg. And then the fourth time they say nobody can do that. And each time this goes back and forth, you can almost hear their voices rise in pitch as they increasingly move towards panic. See, not only are their lives on the line, but so too are the lives of their families. But then thinking maybe their expertise will get them out of this, they say that the king's demand is impossible. No one except the gods can tell you your dream, and they don't live here among the people. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but kings are particularly used to getting their way. Especially this king, who had just ransacked an entire nation to get what he wanted. This is not somebody to mess with, and he flies into a rage and he orders that all of his scholars be executed. And if you remember from chapter 1, Daniel and his 3 friends are scholars now. But when they come back to execute Daniel, all we hear from him are words of calm. He asked Arioch, "Why has the king issued such a harsh decree?" So Arioch told him all that had happened. Daniel went at once to see the king and requested more time to tell him what the dream meant. If you look at these two exchanges, we see this marked difference between the prevailing wisdom of the day and this third way of Daniel. The Babylonian scholars first react according to the established order of the way things had always been done. They didn't even ask for clarification to the king's orders, but instead, they move forward with their usual way of doing things, insisting that things proceed as they always had. But things had not always been this way. The king was shaken so badly by this dream that he couldn't sleep, and he wanted answers. The status quo, as it were, was over, and in its place was a dangerous situation that the way that these scholars had always done things just simply didn't cover. And so in the end, their other response is essentially to insist that the king must be wrong and deny that this problem exists at all. Now, Daniel doesn't even have the benefit of an exchange with the king before the captain of the guard is standing at his doorstep, sword in hand, insisting that he come right now for execution. Yet Daniel's reaction is markedly different. He asks a question: why is this happening? And upon being told why, he doesn't panic. He doesn't say that's impossible. He simply insists that he be taken to the king. And we're not privy to what happened in that conversation. It's not written down here. But on the other side of it, Daniel somehow has permission from the king to take time to find out if he can also dream that dream. So he and his Hebrew brothers pray that the God of heaven show them his mercy by telling them the secret so that they would not be executed along with the other wise men of Babylon. And lo and behold, that night the secret was revealed to Daniel in a vision. So Daniel goes to the king and he tells him exactly what happened, but he starts with this: "You, king, asked an impossible task of these men, because nobody could have your dream. Fortunately for you, king, there is a God who imparts wisdom and has given me your dream." And then he tells him. What we consistently see about Daniel is that Daniel is a guy soaked in the wise, calm, peaceful presence of God. Over and over again in this chapter, we hear about this contrast between the supposedly wise men of Babylon, whose gods are apparently not here, the men who panic, and a wise God who shares and imparts wisdom to those that seek it from him. Daniel is able to go full of peace to a king who wants to kill him, because Daniel is already soaked in that peaceful presence of a wise God. He's able to avert this slaughter because he first was able to be a non-anxious presence to the whole court. He doesn't get caught up in the drama of everyone else's anxiety. He doesn't worry that the task seems impossible. And he doesn't get caught up in fear for his own life or the lives of his colleagues or brothers. Instead, Daniel asks, "Okay, God, you can do this if you want, so show me what I need to see." And God does. Daniel behaves in a way that shows that he trusts God can do this, that God is the one who actually gives such dreams, and so God will reveal what he needs to know. Church, it's a pandemic out there, and there's a lot of fear and anxiety over this virus. But likewise, there's an awful lot of "that's impossible" being shouted back and forth. In this time where it seems that there's something being demanded of us that we've never been asked before, we must be people who trust God, and instead of reacting in fear or in denial, we must take the third way and be this non-anxious presence of God for each other, for our neighbors, and for our world. How we act and react in this time to things like the daily statistics or the shelter-in-place orders or the constant barrage of news hype and competing conspiracy theories, or even little things like some item we can't get from the grocery store or a desperate desire for a haircut. How we react can either be a testimony to our lack of faith, or it can show the world that God is God, and that it's his wisdom, his path, his light that we ought to follow. As Daniel sang, may our response be, "Praise the God forever and ever. Praise his name, for he has all wisdom and power." Grace and peace to you all.